So first practice is look before you say yes. Next practice is counteroffer, negotiate. But the ultimate thing is to be able to say no. I'm not going to do that.
Welcome to Season 2 of Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. With your host, Executive Leadership Coach and CEO of the Granger Network, Carrie Granger, and me, Paul Adams, CEO of Sound Financial Group. This season focuses on accountability, and to support you in increasing accountability in yourself and in those you lead, we're providing a special rate for our listeners who want to engage in one of our accountability courses. Text the word accountability to 555-888 for more information. This is episode 21, How to Free Up Your Brain and Your Life.
Welcome back to Leadership Impact. Today, we're going to flip the script on accountability. Once again, most of us think accountability is the thing that we get boxed in by. Accountability is boxing others in, ourselves in. But what we're going to find out is that no, accountability is the thing that gives us freedom.
I like freedom, Carrie, and I think most of our audience does. But kind of holding on, like...
What?
I don't feel very free when somebody's expecting that I do something in the future that I now have to do. What is it that creates freedom in accountability?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the last episode, we looked at accountability through the lens of outcomes, right? It's all about achieving outcomes, not just about doing the task. Okay. This time, we're going to look at accountability through the lens of completion. In other words, it's not about explaining why things are incomplete and dealing with all the incompletions and open loops around us, like sloppy agreements. We'll have coffee on Tuesday. I said that 4 months ago. I'm waiting on Sarah to get me her input for this research report that I have. I know I have to get to this sales analysis, but I just later, I'm just going to get to it later. Oh my God, did I forget my kids' musical? Oh no, that's tonight, but she has gymnastics at the same time. Oh, the wedding present. We have to get the wedding present for this weekend. And oh my gosh, I had that little piece of feedback to give Melanie that I forgot to give Melanie. See, I'm not free at all.
That's all happening all the time, like a
all the
fog.
Time. Like a fog. It is like a fog. And not only that, the more that we kind of become awake to it, it's more like we're carrying this mountain of incompletions on our back all the time. It's why we think of all the things that we have to do while we're driving or taking a shower. So when things are actually in a state of completion, so I'm going to paint a different picture for you. Okay. Everything that you have to do and handle has existence. It has a place. Like it's either in your calendar with sufficient time to do it. It's in a list that you know where it's going to be. All the contact information you need for what you need to do is where it needs, you know where to find it. You have time to do what you need to do, or people who are counting on things from you that you're not going to do, they actually know that, and you've appropriately completed and tied that up so they can move on. Tell me, how do you feel in that scenario?
When there's all the expectation of me and it's all in existence, but just in my head?
Time and place outside of your head. It's complete. The open loops are closed. Like you may not have done it yet, but you know you have sufficient time in your calendar to prepare for that offsite meeting you have. You know you haven't done it yet, but you know exactly, when your kid's musical is going to come up, you know it's going to prompt you at the time you need to be prompted.
Centered is how I feel.
Yeah.
When all of that is in place.
Centered, spaciousness, so complete, which gives me freedom to be where I am at any moment. I can actually be with you. I don't have to be with all the incompletions and things I haven't gotten done and all the open loops in my life. So completion gives one freedom, and accountability is all about creating a state of completion, not explaining why things are incomplete. So most of us think accountability is, remember that after the fact thing where we explain why things didn't get done, the incompletion. Rather, how we do accountability before the fact is we create a state of completion, which gives us freedom to be in the moment.
And so what does it look like? Most people are not in that place right now.
No, very far away from it, unfortunately. In fact, it sounds like I don't even get it. I should stop listening right now. Too far away from me. That's how it feels
yes.
like, right? For some of us, like, how could I possibly get there from here?
Yes. Because I can't even listen to this podcast anymore. I've got 15 things I need to do, or you're answering emails right now.
Oh my God, Carrie said the kids' musical. I have the kids' soccer game. I mean, everything Carrie just said sparked 15 more things that I forgot about.
And I almost think of it like pressure that builds up on a dam. And that dam breaking sometimes just looks like people suddenly having more and more success in their career. And then there's a bunch of like little failures that eat away at their career. Or sometimes it's like a significant mental break from stress that happens to people. And that overwhelming, like underlying stress, like if you guys listening, if you feel that, like that's the symptom. You might not have it all diagnosed as we've just been talking about it for a few minutes, but it's there. If in the background, what you find is every now and then a serious commitment breaks through the clouds, like forgetting the musical, like forgetting to pick your kid up at soccer, all of those things slowly build up, something breaks through, and that's your indicator that you're living in a cloud of incompletion. So what do we do to have it not live that way for us, and maybe save some of the people around us from living that way for them?
You take our productivity and accomplishment workshop. Just kidding. I mean, you do.
You can. That is a good idea.
You can. I was just thinking about, oh my gosh, we really step by step, but that's not the purpose of this podcast. So the purpose of this podcast is to give you some tidbits, some things that actually really make a difference for you, just taking on one or two new practices. So let's talk about some practices.
I'm ready.
Okay, so it's actually a lot, so the first thing is to start to see through the lens of completion, right? Which can be overwhelming at first, because when you start to see through that lens, you start to see all the areas that are incomplete.
Which is like now you've got to confront all that you've just let happen in the background. Like people got to get enormously stressed when you take them first through that exercise.
Oh, what exercise?
An exercise of even identifying what is currently incomplete.
Yeah. In fact, it can get overwhelming, but sometimes getting it all out, like even on a piece of paper, is useful. And then you start to make choices. One of the first things is, what am I not going to do? What am I going to say no to? And that is a practice that most of us in I would say most of the world, although some cultures have the capacity to say no more than other cultures, but just saying, like even just looking before you say yes, even seeing, is this something I can possibly take on? Even doing a pause. So before I say, yes, I'm going to take that on, Paul, even saying, Paul, let me get back to you, at the end of the week. Now you're going to have to write down, get back to Paul by the end of the week, but that's, at least you give yourself a little pause to look before you say yes. And then the next thing is, counter-offering, negotiating, saying, I'm not going to be able to do 10 pages, but maybe I can do a 4-page outline, and I can recommend somebody who can do the writing. Just even the practice. So first practice is look before you say yes. Next practice is counter-offer, negotiate. But the ultimate thing is to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to do that. I'd love to do that. And, it would just be irresponsible for me to take that on and say yes at this point. So saying no, that's a practice. Having those vulnerable and brave conversations, those conversations that you don't want to have. Like, it might be with my boss, right? It might be like, look, not you've given me, that's a little blamey. Look, I have taken on too much and I'm drowning and I want to be effective. I am an effective person and I need to renegotiate or work with you on what my priorities are. And those are hard conversations. Having the vulnerable and brave conversations, when, I'm making a different choice. Paul, I know I told you I was going to go to your party and I've got, things have just built up so much at home. I have so much on my plate right now. And it kills me to say that I'm not going to come and I'm not going to come and I love you. And those are so hard to say. Or man, I messed up. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And, this is kind of creating, I feel like there's something in between us and I just want to apologize. I didn't do that. And how can I make it up to you? So there's a lot of different practices that we can do before and after the fact. And we'll probably talk about more. But I need to stop and, hear from you what you're hearing in all this.
One is we just talked about a lot of the stuff that are agreements with other people. That if, let's say you just wrote out everything anybody else is expecting of you, but that idea of just even that same piece of paper, just writing out everything you kind of told yourself that you would do.
Totally.
I'm going to start going to the gym. I want to hike Kilimanjaro. I want to do the Pacific Crest Trail. I want to do a 1-year RV trip. Like there's a whole big list of things people might have that they themselves have not gotten straight with themselves. I am not going to climb Kilimanjaro.
You know what, Paul, I just recently, so I kind of get on the bandwagon and then I get off the bandwagon on certain things, right? So, I kind of fell off the bandwagon on my general just health and well-being stuff, the way I eat, drinking water, not as much caffeine, meditating, like exercising, all of this stuff, right? Off the bandwagon. And I'm trying to get on all at once. Like, oh, I gotta, eat this way, cut out those things, stop drinking so much caffeine, drink more water, meditate, exercise. And by the way, nothing slowed down at work. It's just continued. So just for myself, I said, okay, I'm going to do this one thing. And the rest, I'm going to put in I'll do this next list. But I'm not even going to worry about it. I'll do it next. I'm actually just taking on drinking more water. And I'm going to quit beating myself up when I don't wake up at, 4:30 to get my meditation, my exercise, my shake, everything else, right? So I'm just taking on this one thing. I'm saying not right now to the rest. Now, the not right now, that doesn't go away. I have that in existence. I have that somewhere. I have this is my, I'm not doing this now. I'm not right now, but it'll come.
Yes.
And Kilimanjaro, that might be on my not right now. It'll come, but I'm not doing it right now. And just making those choices. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to schedule time to do it. I'm not going to do this right now, but I'm going to keep it around so I don't forget. And these things, I'm just going to flat cross off. But some of those things I cross off, I got to let people know I crossed them off in a nice way.
Yes. And I think some of those are things that maybe we're doing something for ourselves, but we told a bunch of people about it. And we can release that cognitive load that I think I don't want to get too in the head of anybody listening, but it can almost create a bit of an imposter syndrome for ourselves of all the things we intend to do, even if they were just for us, but we've told other people about it. And then we never really got straight that we weren't going to do it. So we're a little bit like our own internal trust account in ourselves starts to erode. And it's very difficult to rebuild when you have this large history of uncompleted self-commitments.
And you said that word cognitive load. I think that's something we deal with more and more today. Yeah, could you say a bit more about, what do you mean by cognitive load?
So cognitive load is this mentality that we have of saying yes to many things, to ourselves or to others, that creates a lot, to use the term we're using today about incompletion, that every single thing that's incomplete, if we don't have some way we're holding it at existence, the only thing holding it at existence is us remembering it.
Yeah.
Whereas I heard it put well once, as somebody says looks to their spouse and says, hey, would you remind me when we get home, I need to do X. It's like, you just not only had cognitive load for yourself, but you just freely shared it with somebody else who you can now blame later because their memory did the one thing it's meant to do. The only thing it's designed to do, forget. If we remembered everything that ever happened to us, we would be absolute basket cases.
Oh, yeah.
We have to forget stuff. It's the only thing the mind does dependably. And that stress of the way we sit inside all those incompletions creates the cognitive load.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. You know, it's really funny when you said the thing about what the mind is designed to do is forget. I just realized why I'm pretty decent at creating structures for accountability, meaning that even when things aren't done yet, or they're going to be done sometime in the future, I can put things in a really good state of completion. Like they exist for me where they need to exist, like in my calendar or on my, this list or the other list. Again, that course we've been talking about actually gives you a structure for it. But here's why I'm good at it, Paul. Because I know myself as extraordinarily forgetful. In fact, it's so funny. We have somebody new coming on our team who's going to be supporting me with my schedule and my calendar. And my current assistant is training him. And it was so funny. She wrote this list of what it's like to work with Carrie, which to me I found very insightful. Number one on the list, Carrie is very forgetful. Even if you talk to her 2 hours before, if it's not on her calendar, she's not doing it. So it's so interesting that because I know I don't really have a good short-term memory, I actually create all these structures around me to ensure that things get complete.
We all are that forgetful.
We are.
It's just that by you living in that self-declaration, you're freed up to not have to feel like you have to remember, or that you would be some kind of less productive or less professional if you didn't remember.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So I think I really get this thing, personally, completion gives you freedom because, if I'm not running around trying to remember everything, and instead I create a system around me that allows for those open loops to get complete, or allows for, conversations to get complete, or agreements to get complete, or promises to get complete. So I have a structure around me for that. I actually am free in any moment. I don't actually have to remember anything. I don't have to remember a thing because it all exists where it needs to exist when I need it. And this will be challenging for me if all of a sudden my calendar went away. I really rely on my calendar because I use my calendar to create and put in, what are the activities to ensure that I get to my, created future.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as, then it's gone. And I can be free with you in any moment because I know I'll do what my calendar tells me to do when I thought about it really hard at some point in the past.
Well, and maybe if you could go a bit deeper into how you can release the cognitive load and get complete on something that's not done yet. You kind of hint at it by putting it in your calendar. We talked about it in one of our past episodes about really creating the full agreement with somebody up front of what everybody's going to do. And then it gets to be complete even though it's not done.
Yeah. So it's a state of completion, meaning that, it's provisionally complete. It's not, the action isn't done, but it ceases to be something I have to have my attention on. So what does that look like, right? So right now we're filming an online course and we have these really great producers, the Bartery, if you ever want to check them out, they're pretty extraordinary. And so up front, we get really clear on our agreements. Who's going to do what and by when? So I know I have to have a set number of hours to review the scripts. Okay. Well, I don't have that on my to-do list, review scripts. I actually have to think, you know what? This is going to take about 12 hours. Okay. So this is going to take 12 hours means I need 12 hours in my calendar that are accounted for script review. Most people don't look at their calendar that way. All they put in their calendar are meetings with other people. And then they think that when they walk into work and they have blank white space, they think, oh, I don't have anything in there. I'll just do email or something. They don't realize they got 12 hours of script review that they're not getting done. And then it's going to get pushed to evenings and weekends. So I actually put in those 12 hours of script review by the clear agreement, by the time that I promised to do it. Now, in order for me to do that script review, they got to send me the scripts by the dates that we agreed to, right? Otherwise, I'm ready to review scripts on June 5th, but if they haven't sent it to me by their promise June 1st, that's not going to work. So it's really important that we set up ahead of time these clear agreements, and I put it in my calendar. So when it comes time, I'm not like, oh my God, I have to do this thing. No, I'm restful. I have time to do it. I'm looking at my scripts now.
Without the cognitive load of all the other incompletions and the stress on you saying, I still haven't done this, done, I haven't got, because those all have a state of completion.
They all have
time
and they all have time and space in my calendar. So I'm free to do what there is for me to do at any moment. And so it's complete for me. Like right now, I know I have to, do certain things in the future, but it's not even in my head what I have to do because I know there's time allocated. Now, when you first do this, Paul, you're going to underestimate the time. Like this was my first time doing an online course where I reviewed scripts. Severely underestimated the time required. So now we're going into like our second round. When we went to our second round, I actually had a better idea of how much time. It's like double that. So, okay, well, I have to make an adjustment and, put 24 hours, something like that. But what happens is you start to do this, you find out that mostly we're overcommitted. So if you really put things in your calendar that you're committed to accomplishing, and somebody says, oh yeah, can you get me, can you give me some research on these different tools by Thursday? You'll look in your calendar and you'll notice, I actually don't have any time. So you'll have to renegotiate for next week.
Oh, so we pick up two things. I think I learned this either with you or alongside you in one of our past adventures, but that literally, if we have ourselves complete on all of our commitments by having the time it's going to take to get the commitment done in our calendar, then our calendar is an accurate representation of our own capacity. So that when somebody says, can you do X, we can actually check if we can do it.
Right. And we have ground to stand on, not just, man, I'm just overloaded in the renegotiation.
Yes, because if somebody's overloaded in corporate America, we talked about that 2 episodes ago. I just got to put my thumb on them harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rather than, okay, yeah, here's the thing. I have time scheduled for this because I was going to give it to you by Friday. So I could move it, but then I'm giving you product A by next week. So what's the choice? Yeah. And then putting last episode around aligning on outcomes and which we didn't talk a lot about strategic thinking, but it's completely oriented, aligned with that. And this episode together. When I do when I start to look at, well, what's my strategy for this year? I want to see what are the outcomes I'm going to accomplish this year. Then I want to start to put in the time required to accomplish that in my calendar. So it's not just like a strategic plan that creates a fantasy, but a strategic plan with outcomes, then the activities required to accomplish that outcomes in real time in my calendar. That's how it's going to get done. Otherwise, you're just going to get busy doing your day-to-day tasks with this great plan on the shelf.
Oh my gosh. And the only time it's going to get done is, I remember somebody said, I tried to explain this to somebody years ago. And I said, can you pick up that pen right now? They said, sure. I said, and they did it. I said, great. Could you pick it up later? And they wait like 10 seconds till it's wildly uncomfortable. And then they grab the pen. I said, no, you grab that now.
Now.
I want you to grab it later.
Later.
And they're like, well, I can't do that. I'm like, right. But that's how we do our whole lives.
Right.
Is we keep doing it later, and we can't ever do it later. It just all builds up like the water up against the dam.
Yeah.
Until it breaks.
Yeah.
Or overflows over the top.
Yes, one of the things that we recommend for people in this productivity and accomplishment workshop is we don't call it this in that workshop, but it's kind of like this. It's kind of like that later list. And if you have a later list or someday list or what we call it, not actually doing now or never actually doing it now, right? If you have that list and you put things on that list, at least you're not doing them. And it's not going to get accomplished. So then you can focus on what you are going to get accomplished and have all the things that aren't going to get accomplished on a list. But at least they have existence. And at any time you can choose, all right, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pick up the pencil now and put it into your calendar to have it happen.
Well, and it can happen later, and I can be complete now. So Carrie, I'm hoping we can leave people with a few things that they can actually do from today. And one is making that list of all the things we told ourselves we were going to do or we told somebody else that we were going to do. Second, put ourselves in the position that we can take all the things that we're still committed to doing after we cross off all the things that we're not going to do and get those that we are going to do in our calendar so that we get the opportunity to be able to understand how good we are at actually estimating how long it's going to take us to do all of the things that we've been intending to do. And even just those two things, even if people don't get a chance to do the online course on accountability or the productivity workshop, those two things by themselves will do a great deal to relieve cognitive load and allow you to increase trust with yourself and with others, because you're going to have the opportunity to tell people when you can and when you can't do things, and do so in a grounded way that gives you the greatest ability to have the freedom that Carrie talked about at the beginning of our episode. Carrie, thank you again.
Yeah, Paul, I think, the thing that just to hit home on what you're talking about is you're creating completion with all the incomplete things. You're saying either I'm not going to do it, that's the way of creating completion, or you're saying, I am going to do it, and you actually create a space to do it. That's a way to create completion.
Well, in the spirit of completion, we hope that this has been a contribution to your leadership impact. Thank you for tuning into Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. Subscribe now at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to support you in your leadership impact, we've offered a special course rate to you, our listeners. Just text the word accountability to 555-888 and you'll receive the link. Learn more at GrangerNetwork.com and join us next week on how to transform your leadership impact with accountability.